Thanks for taking time to talk about this, Ryan. It's a really interesting piece of work here. How do you describe OCVA?
I mean, it's really a landscape, I would say. And this is one view into the landscape, but ultimately it's about the center, I mean, the Cascade Range of Oregon. Um, that's really what it's about. And it's also about, at least for me, it's about my relation. It's one example of my relationship of how I plot these lines, move through space in them, and then also what that ends up meaning to me over time. I realized at some point that it would be really nice to be able to share some of the things that I see out there, because it's not something that everyone can see. Um, and also, even in our community, there's so much is fragile right now. It didn't occur to me until the 2020 fires that I wanted to start filming things.
Mm.
When when we were locked out of these areas for a long, a couple of years, and then when I got back out to the Clackamas River area, um, I just I just couldn't believe what was gone,
Mm.
based on what was there before, because I was so intimate with that particular landscape, and it's just gone.
Yeah.
For our lives anyway. I've been making film things for a long time, but not in a serious way, and I'm not sure if this is serious or not, but it also gave me a chance to unite music, which is serious to me, and bikes, which is serious to me, through this common medium, which might be the only medium I'm aware of that reunites those things. So
Yeah.
that was fun.
Yeah. And just for, I hope everybody's watched it, but if you haven't, it's essentially you narrating over a lot of point of view footage, but also just standard footage of scenes from this OCVA, which we should say is the Oregon Cascade Volcanic Arch, right? That's what it stands for.
Arc.
Arc, sorry,
Yeah.
Oregon Cascade Volcanic Arc, which is a route you plotted, right? Is that's a route you sort of stitched together? Am I right in saying that?
Uh, it is. Yeah, it is my route. The term is not my term.
Okay.
That's a term that already exist in the geology of these volcanoes,
Hmm.
of going up into Washington as well.
Yeah,
Um,
and
but
it's
yeah, it was just a route.
okay. Yeah, so you not
So
only, I mean, it's unlike of any other sort of I don't even know bike film thing that I think a lot of people have probably seen in the sense that yes, it's your narration over this ride that you did with a friend, right? What's the name? David, right?
David Wilcox, yeah.
David Wilcox also riding a lot most of the time, riding in front of you. A lot of the footage,
Yeah.
um, and you're not just talking about the route and oh here's some killer single track. It's really like it seemed like poetry to me. It seemed like a poem overlaid, and it sort of oscillates between this environmental call to action. There's just so many different pieces of it. You also do take people through the route in like a logistical way to some degree, but you've interlaced in there these passages about the landscape itself, like you said, and other things. But you said you were inspired by what was lost in the 2020 wildfires. I'm wondering if you can tell me how the actual writing process took place. Did you take notes while you're on this ride with David? Is this something that you watched the footage back and then wrote down? I'm familiar with your route creation. I'm familiar with your riding and how you sort of think about route making, but I didn't ever know of you and also your music making. You do that as a professional occupation, right? You put scores together, but I never knew you as a writer. So I'm curious if you could help me understand how you wrote the actual words to this, 30-minute ode to the OCVA.
Yeah, it's interesting because we did that ride in 2022. Um, and and I really didn't have this space from 2022 until January to really put it together. So it was very focused effort from January to to March to do that riding. Originally, I went into the ride with the idea of doing exactly, um, of making this film about this thing, and so I had a lot of the concepts in mind, and I had taken some notes at the time, but because of how things have, because it took so long for one to actually make the space to do this, and in that time the focus of what we're up against has completely changed,
Mm.
in terms of the political climate and the how fragile now are the things that I didn't consider fragile before, which are the national forest and the Bureau of Land Management potential nuclear cuts that are about to happen. So suddenly there was this extra weight about these particular places that I'm looking at that are now endangered from a new angle. So that filtered in a lot. I would say I don't consider myself a writer. I don't I don't actually consider myself a filmmaker either. But I definitely am an artist, so I can maybe look at these things from a common place. I it was I don't I've never enjoyed writing before, like writing words, and this
Mhm.
was this was the first time that I actually did.
Mm.
And I sort of saw into it in a way that I had never quite accessed before. I have all these things inside of me that I wanted to somehow express in a way that could be understood. I'm used to doing that through music, which is never understood. It's so much more abstract. So it was neat to be
Mm.
able to kind of cut to a point. And as you say, it's fairly poetic because I don't want to be heavy-handed about it. About the things I want to say, and I want it to blend in a way that makes sense. But ultimately, it's so much about transportation politics
Mm.
for me, and about my experience of giving up driving, which is 11 years ago now.
Mm.
And in that time, being outside of these cars and being outside of the given system of our society, which I don't agree with, but also offering like a long-term perspective on that, on how that changes your view, is I think mostly what I'm writing about,
Mm.
if
You
that
you
makes
once said,
sense.
yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. And what that's one thing I love about this project is that you melded these core sort of, to me, Ryan Francesconi things together. The art, your thoughts, the visual, the audio, the writing. But you said in an interview a couple years ago, I think on Dustin Klein, you did a video with. You said, "quote I like to think of the route as the composition. Bikes are the instruments we're using. They're something you
Mm.
play." And looking back at that quote and then watching OCVA and listening to it, it just feels like you really took that like to the next level. You made that you made that real. Can you expand on that thought about how bikes are the instruments that we're using?
Yeah, I didn't know I said that. I don't remember that, but I kind of said that almost same thing in this film. Um, yeah, I think of if anything, I am a composer. I mean, that's certainly what I'm trained to do and what I have a lot of experience creating. And what I what I think of that is not necessarily a music composition, but it's about organizing elements in time. So whatever those elements are, I think I enjoy placing them in some sort of structure. So the idea of making a route is so applicable to that because you're experiencing something visually, tactily, and often sonically, depending on where you are, over time. And the thing that I really loved about it is that there's no longer this stage, there's no longer this line, there's no longer this idea of I am the performer and you should pay attention to me. And I am the creator and you should pay attention to me. It's democratized the idea of this experience. And that's probably like a little bit too analytical about what it really means, for us to go out there and do these things. But the idea on a simpler level, it's the idea it's like if you slug up a hill for 2 hours and there's nothing up there, like that's not a good route to me.
Mm.
Like you need it to move somewhere and to flow somewhere. And it's often why I don't mind a paved road. Like often people are very conceptual about this needing to be off road,
Mm.
in this genre of riding that we do, right? But often the paved road is a much better choice,
Mm.
when you're looking at the overall flow of the thing.
Mm.
So it's
Right.
like it's kind of I think of ebb and flow. Those are terms that come a lot to me when I think about routes, and I think about surprises. I like surprises personally, even if it's not a surprise to me. But well, I go out there because I want to be surprised. I
Yeah.
want to be pleasantly surprised. So that's my goal probably.
Yeah. You talk a lot about in in the film, you talk a lot about this strong connection to the land, right? And being slow is, I think, a key theme, and being intentional about experiencing what you're
Yeah.
going through. I mean, you open the film talking about speed, and you relate it to the fact that you took the train to the start of the ride, and at the end, you talked about slowing down and the need to slow down. Is that, and that connection to the land, is that like something you've always had? Is this Ryan getting older and wiser? Tell me about that. Did you grow up with that sense? I don't know about your past, but like, where did that sense of wanting to have a strong connection to the land and riding through it in a way that's slow enough to maintain that connection, where did that come from?
Yeah, I think that's something that seeped in over time. It's like a slow realization. And the longer that you travel and exist outside of a car,
Mm.
certainly, I mean, we're probably about the same age. We grew up in America. We were excited to get our license when we were 16, and we thought that you got from A to B by getting in the car and then getting out, and then we just thought that was normal. We grew up in the 80s, right? So
Yeah.
we didn't realize how not normal that is. And what I've realized now is my perspective is a very lonely one, because people are not necessarily on board with how I see things. Certainly some people are, but it's something you can't intellectually understand. Um, like you can't take that statement and say, okay, I understand that, without experiencing it. And I think it takes time to do that. The I think walking is the best, honestly, but
Mm.
it just
Yeah.
takes forever to get
Yeah.
anywhere.
I hear you.
So
Yeah.
there is that sort of balance, right?
Yeah. Right.
And the bike is sort of the perfect balance from my point of view, because it's actually not very slow, but it affords you the idea of just the simple thing of being able to just stop anytime you want, which is not something you can probably do in a car so easily,
Yeah.
or in a
Yeah.
plane, obviously not.
Yeah.
Train not, but train affords you like it takes away, probably, I mean, maybe like in the self-driving future of cars, people will be staring out the window, but at the moment they're just staring at their phone. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
That,
But you
I
can't stare
love.
at your phone while you're riding your bike.
Yeah. Right. I love that you said that about walking, because one of the things I love to do is roam around cities and look at
Yeah.
people and places and just see how people interact. And I love doing that like with my camera. And obviously
Yeah.
my sort of career has always been photographing, bikes as I do that, and doing it from the bike. But if I had my druthers, I actually would prefer to be on foot, because I'm even more mobile
Absolutely.
on the street. I can
Yeah.
whip around. I could really see anything. But then again, the benefits of being on the bike means I can go just a little faster. So I totally
Totally.
appreciate that. Yeah.
But the camera is a really good example, because, and I thought about this with filming, because it's another thing.
Yeah.
Just the act of taking the moment to take your camera and point it at something,
Yeah.
and then you're looking at that thing in a different way.
Yeah.
And I
Totally.
think having the video in that process was interesting to me in that way,
Mm.
rather than just doing the rides like I'd done for years
Yeah.
without documentation,
Yeah.
which is fine too. But again, and I think I said something to that effect, where the first time we did that ride was very fast.
Yeah.
It was like a sporty kind of group, right?
Yeah.
And going into the night and pushing ourselves in that way, which is really not conducive to what we're talking about, because you really need to keep your hands on the bars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other reason why I think this is a different kind of, because so much of the stuff in this genre is about the macho kind of, how fast can I go? How strong can I be? We did it in X
Right.
amount of time. I mean, I won't. I know you've been around a lot of that. I've personally been a rider like that. It's like, I wonder how fast I could do this. Can I push myself? Which is, it's an okay way to be. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But, I actually have a lot of regret looking back at a lot of the tours I've done, and a lot of the multi-day
Mm,
things I've done, being so focused on, can I get 100 miles today? That'd be kind of cool. Can I do this?
yeah.
And in these days, I really think about, man, if I'd just taken time to document, it would be a whole different experience. So I appreciate the film from that perspective, in terms of reminding people the value of slowing down. I want to ask you, you seem like a relatively personal kind of guy. I don't
What does that
necessarily
mean?
think of, I think of, I guess the other word as I wrote personal, I'm like, yeah, that's not even like what even does that mean? I mean, you're not you're not really an introvert to me, because I feel like, you Our Mother the Mountain, you really helped kind of create that, and you love bringing people together, and I know you love doing social rides. But I'm just curious, you're not, you're never someone that's like looking for to be out there in front of the camera, or promoting yourself on your social media platforms or anything like that, right? I don't see a lot of like when the camera's pointed back at you kind of stuff that you put out. So this to me felt like a little departure from that, and I'm just wondering if it was the urgency of the topics you're talking about, or what was it like to do that a little differently, to make yourself a little more vulnerable, put you out there, Ryan, in this way that's more intimate. You're obviously sharing, like you said, a lot of a lot of things about your deeper feelings that you maybe hadn't done before in the public sphere. And as you know, hey, it's out there, it's on YouTube, it's on Vimeo. People can now know what you're feeling. I mean, what was that like for you to cross over into that level of vulnerability?
Well, um, I've been quite vulnerable through music,
Mm,
many times. So I'm quite experienced with getting bad reviews. I've taken a really long break from anything public like that, like you're saying.
mm.
And I think that question alone, I could probably like eat up the rest of your day, I feel like.
Okay.
But so I'll
Yeah.
try not to.
Yeah.
Uh, but ultimately, I wanted to be able to share something, and I was willing to take a risk to do that. I don't need to do it. I don't feel that I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm not selling anything. Um, is an important distinction, I think, sometimes. Um, I did want to share it. Um, I also am of the opinion if you don't have any bad reviews, then no one's really watching it.
Mm,
Uh, so like it's okay,
yeah.
to be criticized. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing that appealed to me in this was actually I felt ready to push myself into a space that I've been avoiding for a while, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
okay.
And I felt okay to return to that. Ultimately, my goal with all of the things that you were referring to is I think I'm willing to sacrifice something for myself if we're able to make this community a bit stronger. And ultimately all of the cycling stuff that I've organized around here is about that. It's about allowing people to connect to each other. I think that's the thing that we need more than anything else
Mm,
moving forward. So
yeah.
if I can think of some way to do that, I'll do that.
Great. I appreciate that. Okay, I want to ask you about a specific section that really stuck with me. And I think you actually did this more than once, where you took, it's almost like this repetitive word after word, almost like a rap, almost is what I kept thinking in my head. It was like listening to
Oh,
a
I think I know
rapper
what you mean.
in some ways. Yeah. And I want to just play it. And then if you could just kind of tell me what that is and what you're trying to do there.
Attempt to participate in cycles of nature rather than wage war against them. Landscape connectivity, topology, continuous deformation, stretching, twisting, bending, arcs, lines, links, directed tree, oriented tree, polytree, acyclic graphs, forest complexity, habitat quality, light and water, nutrient cycling, carbon cycle, hydrologic cycle, recycle, life cycle.
So what is going on with that? Like what are you doing there? What is your intention with those repeated words one after another like that?
Gotcha. It's essentially like it's looking at a lot of the ways that the natural environment has influenced science, but when it's taken these scientific terms like a directed tree and an oriented tree, where we're talking about software engineering terms.
Mm,
Um, so I am a software engineer as well, and the way that we've taken these forms, these natural metaphors, and put them into our science of our normal day, and I've started to this particular piece like kind of afforded me a chance to actually feel like I went back to school for a little bit, and I
mm,
got to do some research like of the geology and really looking deeper into not just the topic, but those specific places. So like that particular section is a culmination of the Santiam Pass, which is a pass with a pretty dark history, as are most of the passes in Oregon. And it was quite interesting to dig in there a little bit and to understand how that came to be. But then again, like, I don't want to be super heavy-handed about it, and I don't have any obligation to explain anything because I'm just making art, right? I'm not making a documentary.
Mm.
I'm not trying to convince anybody. So basically it's words that appealed to me, that I suppose the thing you point out there is probably the most abstract thing in the film, which is probably why it was confusing. But yeah, it means something to me. But as poetry, it doesn't necessarily need to mean something to everyone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. And I also wanted to ask about another. I don't know if this was an intentional audio thing or not, but there's a lot of natural sounds. The tires crunching on the snow, the disc brakes squeal. You clearly didn't look to suppress that piece of the audio in favor of your voice and the musical score. So why did you love to sort of like leave those in? Was that the sort of the core part of writing that you wanted to come across? Or I'm curious what you were thinking.
Probably just I mean, on one degree, like, I have no idea what I'm doing as a filmmaker, so that's probably one thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And then the other part of it is that all of this, I'm quite experienced with sound design, and all of the sound design is taken from the actual audio of the camera. So I wanted to leave at least some reality of what we were doing, even if it sounds a bit rough sometimes. So I mean, the disc brake thing was a happy coincidence, which, where the disc brakes were in tune with the music, and I was able to actually score the music around the disc brakes. So like those sorts of things are it's interesting to me because there's not many situations in which there's only one person in control of all these elements. So I thought that was fun to be able to shape the video to the music, which is generally the opposite way that it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, so everything is influencing the other things, and I mean, of course, I mixed it as well, so it was just up to me. And certainly the voiceover was my biggest risk. I have no experience doing that till now. I found it quite difficult to be able to not sound, and I'm not totally successful, by the way, like, in my own opinion. Like, I did the best I could. It's not really something that I'm experienced with. But I felt like just the piece as an abstract image with music wouldn't be able to say very much. It would just be, oh, that's pleasant. Let's put it on in the coffee shop while we're doing espresso. It's like it would just end up like that.
Yeah. I think, speaking of that, I think people will hear this and take away from it a lot of different things depending on where they're at. I think it's going to strike because it's a mix of, I mean, there's the beauty, there's the inspiration of writing, there's this, I felt this like melancholy sort of foreboding. The score isn't necessarily, I wouldn't call the score uplifting. The beat is very slow. Your words obviously are a lot of them are serious about what's happening with our natural lands and our public lands and forests. I heard it a lot as a call to action, but I'm curious, what do you hope people take away from it, or is that not something you want to direct at all? Like, what do you hope people take away from this?
The only thing that I have very low expectations, after being a musician for a long time. So
Okay.
my only hope is that people will make it to the end occasionally.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty ambitious hope in this day and age when attention span is so fragmented. And if anything, I push against that fragmentation of attention span. Like, certainly this piece is not something that you can just instantly watch 2 minutes and understand what it was. It's interesting, and unfortunately, because it's on Vimeo, and that you have the analytics of what people are actually doing and when they're stopping, and I'm trying not to look at that because it's actually pretty discouraging, because you can see, like, you can see how far they get. So if anything, like it's an opportunity to push against that, because there's so many opportunities that are pushing people the other way.
Yeah.
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 Hopefully an ad doesn't pop up in the middle on YouTube, which I think is a situation that
Yikes.
happens.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I can appreciate pushing against the distraction, economy or whatever you want to call it, attention economy stuff that's happening right now for sure. And this is definitely not in the same ilk as so many things that we see on the internet these days, which I appreciate. But also to that note, if you have someone in a theater or a screening and they're sitting down, they're going to be less likely to be able to leave. Captive audience. Yeah. So any plans on submitting this to film festivals or having a local screening? I haven't heard of anything, but I'm just curious if there would be something like that.
Yeah, actually, yes. No local screening, because that sounds stressful and complicated to me. But I have submitted it to some festivals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 13 festivals I've submitted to. All of them in some degree in an environmental topic. I had, I think they're not, the soonest one is like June 30th in terms of their decisions. Like I said, okay. I'm not a filmmaker, so I have no idea about this world, and it's new to me. So I was like, oh, there's film festivals. And there's, it was like, there's so many, I had no idea, all over the world. So there's the ones that I've submitted to, there's 2 that are local, which look interesting to me, which is the Eugene Environmental Film Festival, which sounds pretty cool. And then there's also the Bend Film Festival. And I feel like because of those geographic locations, it's pretty applicable to those places. Certainly in the ride, right. I mean, we go right through Bend.
Right. Yeah.
But whatever. I mean,
yeah.
Again, that was sort of my personal financial investment, because you generally have to pay to submit to a festival. And I figured I would do a limited financial investment just with the hope that somebody would see it, because like I said, I'm not trying to make a career out of this or something. I'm just trying to share this particular view of these particular places. And I've also been taking a break this year. In order to finish this project, I took a break from doing any work at all. So I've not been working other than this, and I'm kind of starting to figure out what I want to do next. So one of the things that I definitely want to do next is if anything, it's a neat idea to try to get out here in Oregon and try to document some things before they're lost, but also actively get out there and document some things as they're being lost, is another possibility. So yeah, I just wanted to make some space to have some time to actually look at things, slow myself down as well.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that you made it. I think it's really wonderful. It's memorable for sure. Strongly suggest and encourage everybody get all the way to the end and listen and watch. And I want to ask, is there anything else that you want to share about this?
I mean, not really. I would say if anything, it's a call to be on your bike in nature, not drive to the trailhead, learn how to see what it feels like to ride there, and see what it feels like to look at everything before the trailhead rather than just driving to the edge of the wilderness and get out of the car and walk into it. There's a lot of stuff in between, and that all matters. I think one of the things that I dislike, because I look at so many maps, right? And I dislike these lines that are everywhere dividing things. And riding from your door with the bike to the place, you're riding across so many lines, and I feel like that is the thing that gives you the respect for A to B, and also gives you the respect for the land. So that's what I've learned being out of the car.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much, Ryan. I really appreciate your time and sharing all this with us.
Oh, thanks for instigating the conversation. Good to see you.
Great.
When I realized there are places that I loved which are now gone, I wanted to look closer at the ones that remain, and at a marker and reminder for the ones we have lost.